There is a question that arrives quietly, often without warning. You might notice it one morning when getting out of bed takes just a moment longer than it used to. Or perhaps it appears in the middle of the night, when sleep retreats and the mind fills with thoughts that were not there a decade ago. The question is simple, and it is this: is this just what getting older feels like? Most people answer yes. They accept the slower mornings, the interrupted nights, the gradual fading of energy as inevitable. They have been told, directly or indirectly, that aging means decline, that the body has a certain number of years, and after that, things simply wind down. But what if this assumption is wrong? What if some of what feels like aging is not the passage of time itself, but something else entirely, something that can be understood, and once understood, addressed? There is a quiet mistake that many people over 65 never realize they are making. It has nothing to do with diet trends or exercise fads. It has to do with a fundamental misunderstanding of how the human body actually works. The body operates on rhythms that are older than humanity itself. It expects certain signals at certain times. It responds to light and darkness in ways that most people never learn. And when those signals are missing, the body does not fail dramatically. It simply drifts. Energy fades. Sleep fragments. The mind feels less sharp. But here is what is not often explained. Much of this drift is not damage. It is confusion. The body is not broken. It is simply waiting for signals it is no longer receiving. And signals, unlike lost years, can be restored. You are listening to the Longevity Library, where we archive the wisdom of healthy aging. The architecture of a long life. Understanding time, body, and balance. There is a question that becomes more interesting with each passing year. It is not simply how long can I live, but rather how well can I live. The distinction matters because time itself is neutral. It can bring wisdom and depth, or it can bring limitation and discomfort. The difference often lies not in the number of years, but in the condition of the body and mind that carry us through them. For much of human history, reaching an advanced age was relatively rare. Those who did were often seen as remarkable not just for their longevity, but for what they could still do. They worked in fields, advised their communities, and maintained a presence in daily life that we might now consider unusual. Today, many people live into their 80s and 90s, but the quality of those years varies enormously. Some experience those decades with vitality and clarity. Others find themselves limited by conditions that were once considered inevitable. What separates these experiences? This is not a simple question, and it does not have a single answer. But over recent decades, researchers who study aging have begun to notice patterns. These patterns emerge from studying populations around the world where people live not just long lives, but long, healthy lives. They emerge from examining the biology of how bodies change over time. And they emerge from understanding that aging is not a done process, but a collection of many small changes that accumulate. This is not about reversing aging or discovering a hidden fountain of youth. Such ideas belong to mythology, not science. Instead, this is about understanding the architecture of a long life. Every building, no matter how grand, depends on its foundation. Every life, no matter how long, depends on the daily choices that either strengthen or weaken that foundation. The goal is not perfection. The goal is understanding how the body works, so that the choices we make can support the life we want to live. Consider for a moment how the human body is designed. It is not a machine that runs until it wears out, though that analogy is often used. It is more like a garden. A garden requires certain conditions to thrive. It needs light, but not too much. It needs water, but in the right amounts. It needs soil that contains the right nutrients. And it needs attention, not constant intervention. but regular observation and gentle adjustment. A garden left completely alone will become overgrown. A garden subjected to harsh chemicals and constant digging will struggle. The healthiest gardens are those where the conditions are consistently favorable, where the gardener understands the basic needs of what is growing there. The human body is similar. It has basic needs that have not changed in thousands of years. It needs movement. It needs rest. It needs nourishment. It needs light and darkness in appropriate cycles. It needs connection with others. These are not complicated requirements, but modern life has made them surprisingly difficult to meet consistently. What follows is an exploration of these fundamental needs, not as a checklist to be completed, but as a framework for understanding how the body maintains itself over decades. Some of what will be discussed may confirm things you have long suspected. Other parts may challenge assumptions about what matters most for long-term health. The goal throughout is not to prescribe a specific way of living, but to provide information that allows for more informed choices. Because ultimately, the architecture of a long life is built one decision at a time, day after day, year after year. And understanding how those decisions fit together is the first step toward building something that will stand firm for decades to come. The hidden rhythm inside every cell. There is something happening inside the body right now that you cannot feel, yet it influences nearly everything you experience. It affects when you feel hungry and when you feel alert. It influences your body temperature, your blood pressure, and your ability to think clearly. It even plays a role in how well your body fights off illness and how restfully you sleep at night. This is the circadian rhythm, and it is far more than just a sleep cycle. It is a fundamental organizing principle of human biology. Every cell in the body contains its own internal clock, and these clocks are synchronized by a master clock in the brain. This master clock responds primarily to one thing: light. For most of human history, this system worked automatically. The sun rose, and light entered the eyes. That light signaled the brain that it was time to be alert and active. As the sun set, darkness signaled the brain to begin preparing for rest. The body's temperature would drop slightly. Melatonin, sometimes called the hormone of darkness, would begin to rise. Sleep would come naturally when it was dark, and wakefulness would come naturally with the light. Modern life has disrupted this ancient pattern in ways that are still being understood. Electric light means that darkness is optional. Screens mean that bright light often continues until the moment we close our eyes. Schedules mean that we may wake before dawn or stay active long after sunset. These disruptions are not necessarily harmful in themselves, but when they become chronic, they can confuse the master clock. Consider what happens when the circadian rhythm is functioning well. In the early morning hours before waking, blood pressure begins to rise gradually. This prepares the cardiovascular system for the demands of the day. Cortisol, a hormone that promotes alertness, increases. By the time you wake, your body is ready to be awake. Later in the morning, cognitive function typically peaks. This is when complex tasks are often easiest to perform. In the early afternoon, coordination may be at its best. Body temperature reaches its highest point in the late afternoon or early evening. Then, as evening progresses, melatonin begins to rise. Body temperature drops, and the body prepares for sleep once again. This rhythm affects digestion as well. Bowel movements are more likely in the morning hours. Enzyme production in the digestive system follows a daily pattern. Even the way the body processes food varies depending on when it is eaten. When this rhythm is disrupted, the effects can be wide-ranging. Sleep becomes more difficult. Energy during the day may fluctuate unpredictably. Digestion may become irregular. Over time, chronic disruption of the circadian rhythm has been associated with various health conditions. though the relationships are complex and still being studied. The key insight from this research is that the body expects regularity. It expects light at certain times and darkness at others. It expects to be active during the day and at rest during the night. When these expectations are met consistently, the body's systems function more smoothly. When they are not, those systems must constantly adjust. And over time, that constant adjustment may contribute to wear and tear. For those in later decades of life, this understanding is particularly relevant. As people age, the circadian rhythm often shifts. It tends to become earlier, meaning that sleepiness arrives sooner in the evening and wakefulness arrives sooner in the morning. This is a natural change, not a problem to be solved, but understanding it can help explain certain patterns. If you find yourself falling asleep easily at 8 in the evening, but waking at 3 in the morning unable to return to sleep, this may simply be your internal clock doing what it does. Your body has completed its sleep and is ready to be awake, even if the clock on the wall says otherwise. The response to this pattern does not have to be frustration. It can be adaptation, if sleep naturally comes earlier. Adjusting the evening schedule to accommodate this may be more effective than fighting against it. If waking comes earlier, using that time for quiet activities, reading, or gentle movement may be more satisfying than lying in bed wishing for more sleep. The circadian rhythm is not something that can be ignored. It is woven into the fabric of human biology. Learning to work with it, rather than against it, is one of the most fundamental skills for maintaining energy and rest throughout life. When sleep is interrupted, understanding the middle of the night, there is a particular experience that many people know well. Falling asleep is not difficult. The head touches the pillow, and within minutes, sleep arrives. But then, somewhere in the darkness, usually between 2 and 4 in the morning, the eyes open. The mind is clear. Sleep is finished. Yet the clock says there are hours remaining before morning. This pattern is common enough that many accept it as normal, especially in later decades. But understanding why it happens can make a difference in how it is managed. There are several possibilities, and they require different responses. The first possibility is the circadian shift mentioned earlier. When the internal clock advances, the body completes its sleep earlier. If you go to bed at 9, your body may be ready to wake at 4, having had 7 hours of sleep. This is not insomnia. It is simply a different schedule. The solution, if a solution is needed, is not to force more sleep, but to adjust the timing of rest. Going to bed later may shift waking later, though this is not always easy when sleepiness arrives early. The second possibility involves breathing. This is less commonly discussed, but may be more significant than many realize. During sleep, the muscles of the body relax. This includes the muscles that keep the airway open. For most people, this relaxation is not a problem. The airway remains open enough for air to pass freely. But for some, the relaxation is enough to cause the airway to narrow or close partially. This is where the story becomes more specific. The deepest relaxation occurs during a particular stage of sleep, known as REM sleep. This is the stage when most dreaming happens. During REM, the brain actively paralyzes the body's muscles to prevent dreaming from becoming physical action. This paralysis affects the airway muscles as well. If the airway is already somewhat narrow, this additional relaxation can cause it to close. What happens next is subtle. The brain detects that breathing has stopped or become shallow. It responds by waking just enough to tighten the muscles and restore breathing. This waking is so brief that it may not be remembered, but it disrupts sleep. And it tends to happen most frequently during the REM periods that occur in the early morning hours. This pattern can explain the experience of sleeping well for several hours, then waking repeatedly or finally waking too early and feeling unrest. The breathing disruptions may be occurring during those early morning REM periods, fragmenting sleep without the person being aware of why. The standard way to detect such disruptions is through a sleep study. But these studies have a limitation. They calculate an average number of breathing disruptions across the entire night. If someone has no disruptions for the first 5 hours, and then significant disruptions during the final 2 hours of REM sleep, the average may appear mild. Yet the experience is not mild. The final 2 hours of sleep, which should be the most restorative, are severely disrupted. For those who suspect this pattern, there are options to explore. Dental appliances that gently reposition the lower jaw can help keep the airway open by moving the tongue forward. These are most effective when custom fitted by a dentist familiar with sleep breathing issues. The over-the-counter versions are generally not recommended because they do not fit precisely and may cause discomfort or other problems. Other options exist as well, but the important step is recognition. Waking in the early morning and being unable to return to sleep is not simply a matter of trying harder to sleep. It may be a signal from the body that something during sleep needs attention. Understanding that signal is the first step toward addressing it. Light as a daily signal. Among all the influences on the body's daily rhythms, light is the most powerful. It is also the most accessible. Unlike many factors that affect health, light requires no prescription, no special equipment, and no significant expense. It simply requires attention to when and how it is used. The relationship between light and the body begins in the eyes. Special cells in the retina, different from those used for vision, detect the presence of bright light and send signals directly to the master clock in the brain. This signal tells the clock what time it is. Morning light says the day has begun. Evening light says the day is still continuing. For this reason, the timing of light exposure matters enormously. Morning light, particularly in the first hour after waking, helps synchronize the internal clock to the external world. It reinforces the message that this is the beginning of the active period. It helps ensure that sleepiness will arrive at the appropriate time that evening. Afternoon light also has effects, though they are different. Light exposure in the afternoon and early evening can help delay the internal clock, which may be useful in certain situations. But for most people, the critical exposure is in the morning. Evening light, particularly in the 2 to 3 hours before bedtime, sends the opposite signal. It tells the brain that the day is still active. This can delay the onset of melatonin, the hormone that prepares the body for sleep. It can make falling asleep more difficult, and it can shift the entire sleep schedule later. The practical implications of this are straightforward. Morning is the time to seek light. Opening curtains, sitting near a window, or spending time outside shortly after waking helps anchor the daily rhythm. For those who wake before dawn, a dawn-simulating light can be helpful. These devices gradually increase in brightness over 30 to 60 minutes, mimicking the natural sunrise. Even with eyes closed, the light penetrates the eyelids and signals the brain that morning is approaching. Many people find this makes waking easier and morning energy more reliable. Evening is the time to dim light. Reducing overhead lights, using lamps instead of bright ceiling fixtures, and avoiding screens in the last hour before bed all support the natural preparation for sleep. The goal is not complete darkness throughout the evening, but a gradual reduction that mirrors the setting sun. For sleep itself, darkness is the goal. Bedrooms intended for sleep benefit from blackout curtains or shades. The glowing numbers on clocks, the lights from cable boxes, and the street light outside the window all provide enough light to be detected by those specialized cells in the eyes. Even small amounts of light can disrupt the quality of sleep, though the sleeper may not be aware of it. When complete darkness is impossible, a sleep mask can be effective. This simple tool provides a physical block to light, ensuring that the eyes receive the darkness signal throughout the night. It is not a solution for everyone, but for those sensitive to light during sleep, it can make a meaningful difference. The body's response to light is not a matter of opinion. It is a matter of biology. The cells that detect light for the circadian clock do not care about personal preferences or beliefs. They respond to light when it is present. Understanding this allows for choices that work with biology rather than against it. The body's need for movement. There is a pattern observed in populations around the world where people live long and remain active into advanced age. It is not that they exercise in the way the word is often used today. They do not necessarily go to gyms or follow structured workout programs. Instead, movement is woven into the fabric of daily life. They walk to markets. They tend gardens. They rise from chairs and sit down again many times throughout the day. They carry objects. They reach and bend and stretch as part of ordinary activities. The total amount of movement across a day is substantial, but it is accumulated in small increments rather than concentrated into a single period. This pattern may be more sustainable than the all-or-nothing approach that many people attempt. The idea that exercise must be 30 or 60 minutes of continuous effort can be discouraging. It can feel like too much to fit into a busy day. But the body does not require continuous movement to benefit. It requires frequent movement. Consider what happens when muscles are used. Blood flow increases. Nutrients are delivered. Waste products are removed. The muscles themselves send signals to the brain that contribute to coordination and balance. Joints are lubricated. Bones receive signals that help maintain their density. These effects occur whether the movement is part of a workout or part of daily life. The challenge for many people is that modern life has removed much of the need for movement. Food appears without hunting or gathering. Water flows from taps. Information arrives through screens. Entertainment requires only a finger to change channels. This convenience comes with a cost. The body that is not used begins to lose capacity. Muscles become smaller. Bones become less dense. Balance becomes less certain. This process is not inevitable. It is a response to disuse, and it can be slowed or even partially reversed by reintroducing movement into daily life. The key is consistency rather than intensity. A daily walk of 20 minutes provides more benefit than a strenuous hike once a week followed by 6 days of inactivity. Standing up and sitting down several times in an hour provides more benefit than an hour at the gym followed by hours of sitting. The body responds to frequent signals. It adapts to what it is asked to do regularly. For those who have been inactive, starting with small amounts is appropriate. A few minutes of walking, a few stretches in the morning, a few times of standing up from a chair without using hands for support. These small efforts signal the body that movement is still required. Over time, capacity increases. What was difficult becomes easier. What was impossible becomes possible. Balance is particularly worth attention. The systems that keep us upright involve the inner ear, the eyes, and sensors in the muscles and joints. These systems benefit from being challenged. Standing on one foot while brushing teeth, walking backward for a few steps, or practicing rising from a chair without using hands all provide input to these systems. They help maintain the coordination that prevents falls. Movement also affects mood. This is not a matter of vague optimism, but of measurable biology. Physical activity influences neurotransmitters and hormones that regulate emotional state. The effect is not immediate or dramatic, but over time, regular movement is associated with more stable mood and greater resilience to stress. The body was designed for movement. Every system within it expects to be used. When it is used regularly, it maintains its function longer. When it is not, function declines. This is not a judgment. It is simply how biology works. Understanding this allows for choices that support the body in doing what it is meant to do. The question of what to eat. Few topics generate as much confusion as food. Every decade brings new recommendations, new warnings, and new certainty about what should be eaten and what should be avoided. This constant change can create the impression that nutrition is impossibly complicated or that experts cannot agree on anything. But beneath the shifting headlines, there are patterns that have remained remarkably consistent across time and across cultures. These patterns emerge from studying populations where diet-related diseases are rare and where people tend to live long, healthy lives. The first pattern is that whole foods are different from processed foods. This seems obvious, but the implications are worth considering. A whole food is one that has been altered as little as possible from its natural state. An apple is a whole food. Apple juice is not, even if it comes from apples. The juice contains the sugar from the apple, but lacks the fiber that slows its absorption. The body responds differently to the apple than to the juice. The apple provides satiety and a gradual release of energy. The juice provides a rapid surge of sugar that the body must manage. This distinction applies broadly. A potato is a whole food. Potato chips are not. Oats are a whole food. Many breakfast cereals are not. Meat that is simply meat is different from processed meats that contain preservatives and other additions. The more a food has been changed from its original form, the more likely it is to affect the body in ways that may not be beneficial over time. The second pattern involves variety. Traditional diets around the world differ enormously in what they include. Some are rich in fish. Some rely on beans and grains. Some include dairy, and some do not. What they share is variety. People eat different things across days and seasons. This variety helps ensure that the body receives the range of nutrients it needs. The third pattern involves the social context of eating. In many cultures where long life is common, meals are not rushed. They are shared with others. They are occasions for connection as well as nourishment. This may matter more than is often recognized. Eating while stressed, eating alone, or eating while distracted all affect digestion and the body's response to food. For those trying to make sense of nutrition recommendations, there may be value in stepping back from specific rules and considering broader principles. Does this food resemble something that grows in nature? Is this meal similar to what people might have eaten generations ago? Am I eating this with attention and perhaps with company? These questions may be more useful than tracking specific nutrients. There is also the question of timing. When food is eaten affects how it is processed. The body's ability to handle sugar, for example, varies across the day. It is generally better in the morning and early afternoon than in the evening. Large meals late at night may be more difficult to process than the same meals eaten earlier. This is another area where the circadian rhythm plays a role. Digestion, like everything else in the body, follows a daily pattern. None of this requires perfection. The goal is not to eat ideally every day for the rest of life. The goal is to make choices that, over time, support the body's function. A single meal matters little. A pattern of eating matters greatly. Understanding this can reduce the anxiety around individual food choices while supporting better decisions over the long term. The social self. There is a tendency to think of health as an individual matter. What one eats, how one moves, whether one sleeps well. These are personal choices with personal consequences. But this view misses something essential about human biology. Humans evolved in groups. Survival depended on cooperation, communication, and connection. The body developed systems that expect social contact. These systems influence hormones, stress responses, and even immune function. Research over recent decades has consistently found that people with stronger social connections tend to live longer and healthier lives. This relationship holds even when accounting for other factors like diet, exercise, and medical care. The effect is not small. Some analyses suggest that social isolation carries a risk comparable to smoking or obesity. Why would this be? Several mechanisms may be involved. Social connection provides emotional support that buffers against stress. When stress is shared or discussed, its physiological effects may be reduced. Connection also provides practical support. People with social ties are more likely to have help when needed, whether that help involves transportation, information, or encouragement. There is also the possibility that social engagement itself keeps the brain active. Conversation requires attention, memory, and social cognition. Maintaining relationships requires tracking information about others, their lives, and their connections. These mental demands may help maintain cognitive function. For those in later decades, social connections can become harder to maintain. Retirement removes daily contact with coworkers. Friends may move away or become ill. Family may live at a distance. The natural opportunities for connection that existed throughout life may diminish. This is where intentionality becomes important. Maintaining social ties in later years may require more effort than it once did. It may mean scheduling regular calls with family. It may mean joining groups organized around interests rather than work. It may mean being the one who reaches out rather than waiting to be reached. The quality of connections matters as well. A few close relationships provide more benefit than many superficial ones. The sense of being understood and valued by others appears to be particularly important. This is not about the number of people in a social network, but about the depth of connection. There is also the question of purpose. Many people derive a sense of meaning from their roles in life. Parent, spouse, worker, community member. When these roles change, the sense of purpose can be disrupted. Finding new ways to contribute, to be needed, and to matter to others may be as important for long-term health as any physical practice. This is not something that can be prescribed. Purpose is personal. For some, it comes from volunteering. For others, from mentoring younger people. For others, from creative work or from caring for grandchildren or from simply being present for friends. The form matters less than the presence. Having a reason to get up in the morning. Having people who count on you. Having a sense that your existence makes a difference to someone else. These intangibles may be among the most powerful influences on how well people age. The environment around us. Most discussions of health focus on what happens inside the body. What we eat, how we move, whether we sleep. But the body does not exist in isolation. It exists in an environment that shapes these factors in ways that are easy to overlook. Consider the built environment. The design of homes and neighborhoods influences how much people move. Stairs encourage movement. Elevators discourage it. Sidewalks that lead somewhere interesting encourage walking. Roads designed only for cars discourage it. These influences operate below the level of conscious choice. People in walkable neighborhoods walk more without deciding to exercise. People in homes with gardens spend more time outside without planning to. Consider the food environment. What is available, affordable, and convenient shapes what people eat. This is not about willpower. It is about what the environment makes easy. When fresh vegetables are readily available and prominently displayed, they are more likely to be chosen. When processed foods fill the shelves and advertisements, they are more likely to be chosen. The environment nudges behavior in one direction or another. Consider the social environment. The people around us influence our habits in ways we may not recognize. If friends and family are active, activity seems normal. If they eat certain foods, those foods seem appropriate. If they value rest and sleep, rest seems important. Humans are social creatures who learn from those around them. The environment includes not just physical spaces, but the people who occupy them. For those seeking to support their health over the long term, attention to environment may be more effective than attention to willpower. Willpower is a limited resource. It can be exhausted. Environment operates continuously. An environment that supports good choices makes those choices easy. An environment that works against good choices requires constant effort to resist. This understanding can guide practical decisions. Arranging the kitchen so that healthy foods are visible and accessible. Placing the television in a less comfortable room to discourage excessive sitting. Finding walking routes that are pleasant and interesting. Joining groups where the prevailing habits align with personal goals. These environmental changes require effort once, then provide benefits continuously. There is also the larger environment to consider. Air quality, water quality, exposure to various substances. These factors vary by location and by circumstance. Understanding them does not require becoming an expert. It requires awareness that these factors exist and that they may matter over the long term. The body interacts with its environment constantly. It breathes the air. It drinks the water. It absorbs substances through skin. It responds to light and sound and temperature. These interactions are not neutral. They affect how the body functions. Paying attention to them is not paranoia. It is simply acknowledging that the body is part of a larger system. The integration of practice. Reading about all these factors separately can create the impression that health is complicated, requiring attention to dozens of different areas simultaneously. This impression can be paralyzing. If everything matters, where does one begin? But these factors are not separate in practice. They interact. They support each other. And small changes in one area can create ripples that affect others. Consider movement. When people move more during the day, they often sleep better at night. Better sleep improves energy and mood, which makes movement more likely the next day. Movement also affects appetite and food choices. People who are active often find themselves naturally drawn to foods that support that activity. Consider light exposure. Morning light improves sleep. Better sleep improves energy. More energy makes movement easier. Movement brings people outside, which provides more light exposure. The cycle continues. Consider social connection. Spending time with others often involves movement, whether walking together or simply being out in the world. Social connection reduces stress, which improves sleep. Better sleep supports the emotional regulation that makes social connection easier. These interactions mean that progress in one area often supports progress in others. The goal is not to perfect every area simultaneously. The goal is to find an entry point that feels manageable and to allow the natural interactions to support further change over time. For some, the entry point might be morning light. Simply opening curtains upon waking or spending a few minutes outside. For others, it might be an evening walk. For others, it might be reducing light in the hours before bed. For others, it might be reaching out to a friend. Any of these can be a beginning. What matters is consistency rather than intensity. A small change maintained over time produces more benefit than a large change abandoned after weeks. The body responds to what is done regularly. It adapts to patterns. Establishing a pattern, any pattern, is the foundation upon which further change can be built. This is not about achieving an ideal. It is about moving in a direction. The direction matters more than the current position. Understanding the principles that support long-term health allows for choices that, over time, accumulate into something substantial. The question of technology. Modern life offers countless devices and interventions claiming to support health. Sleep trackers, light therapy glasses, supplements, specialized foods. Monitoring devices. Some of these may be helpful. Others may be unnecessary. Distinguishing between them requires understanding what the body actually needs. The body needs light and darkness at appropriate times. This does not require special devices. It requires attention to when light is present and when it is absent. A dawn simulator can be helpful for those who wake before sunrise, but it is not essential. Opening curtains upon waking provides light. Turning off screens before bed reduces light. These are choices, not purchases. The body needs movement. This does not require a gym membership or special equipment. It requires finding reasons to move throughout the day. Walking to a destination, gardening, cleaning, stretching while watching television. These are activities, not products. The body needs rest. This does not require a special mattress or pillow, though comfort matters. It requires allowing enough time for sleep and creating conditions that support it. Darkness, quiet, appropriate temperature. These are conditions, not purchases. The body needs nourishment. This does not require supplements for most people, though there are exceptions. It requires access to whole foods and the willingness to prepare them. This is about food, not about products. The appeal of technology is that it promises solutions without effort. Wear this device and it will track your sleep. Take this supplement and it will provide what your diet lacks. Use this light and it will regulate your rhythm. But technology cannot replace the basic practices that support health. It can only support them or distract from them. There may be situations where technology is genuinely helpful. A continuous positive airway pressure device for sleep apnea. A custom-fitted dental appliance for breathing. A dawn simulator for winter mornings in northern latitudes. These are tools that address specific needs. They are not substitutes for the fundamental practices of living well. The question to ask about any health-related product is simple. Does this support a basic need that is not being met? Or does it promise to meet a need that does not exist? The answer to this question can guide choices about what to adopt and what to ignore. The long view. There is a difference between how people think about health in their 40s and how they think about it in their 70s. In earlier decades, health can seem like something to manage for future benefit. Choices made now will pay off later. This is true, but it can make health feel abstract, like saving for a retirement that is decades away. In later decades, health is not abstract. It is immediate. How well you sleep tonight affects how you feel tomorrow. How well you move today affects what you can do this week. The connection between choices and experience becomes more direct. This immediacy can be motivating. The benefits of better sleep are not theoretical. They are experienced. The benefits of movement are not distant. They are felt. This shifts the frame from delayed gratification to immediate quality of life. At the same time, the long view still matters. The choices made this year affect not just this year, but the years that follow. The body accumulates the effects of what is done regularly. Small advantages compound. Small disadvantages also compound. The trajectory matters. Taking the long view does not mean sacrificing present enjoyment for future benefit. It means recognizing that present enjoyment and future benefit are not always separate. A walk today is enjoyable today and beneficial for the future. A good night's sleep is restorative tonight and protective over time. A meal shared with friends is nourishing now and strengthening of connections that will matter later. The integration of present and future is the goal. Practices that support long-term health can also support immediate well-being. They are not opposing forces. They are the same force operating on different time scales. This understanding can reduce the sense of burden that sometimes accompanies health discussions. The goal is not to add more tasks to an already full life. The goal is to align daily life with the body's needs in ways that make each day better and each year stronger. The unmeasurable factors. There are aspects of long life that do not appear in research studies because they cannot be easily measured. Attitude toward difficulty. Sense of humor. Ability to adapt when plans change. Willingness to ask for help. Gratitude for small pleasures. These qualities are not the subject of clinical trials, but they appear often in stories of people who live long and well. This is not to suggest that attitude determines health. Such claims oversimplify and can even be harmful, implying that illness results from insufficient positivity. That is not the case. Biology is real. Genetics are real. Accidents and illnesses happen regardless of outlook. But within the constraints of biology, there is room for the unmeasurable. How people respond to what life brings. Whether they find meaning even in difficulty. Whether they maintain connections even when circumstances change. Whether they continue to engage with the world rather than withdrawing from it. These factors may matter most when other things go wrong. When mobility decreases, the ability to find new interests matters. When friends are lost, the willingness to make new connections matters. When health challenges arise, the capacity to adapt matters. These are not skills that appear suddenly when needed. They are developed over a lifetime of small choices. The people who age most successfully are not those who avoid all difficulty. They are those who maintain engagement with life despite difficulty. They continue to find reasons to get up in the morning. They continue to care about something beyond themselves. They continue to be curious about the world and the people in it. This is not something that can be prescribed. It is something that can be cultivated. By paying attention to what brings meaning. By staying connected to others. By remaining open to new experiences even when old ones are no longer possible. By accepting what cannot be changed while still acting on what can. The architecture completed. The architecture of a long life is not built in a day. It is built slowly, decision by decision, habit by habit, year by year. The foundation is understanding how the body works. The structure is the daily practices that support it. The finishing is the attitude and engagement that make a life worth living. There is no single blueprint that works for everyone. Bodies differ. Circumstances differ. Preferences differ. But the principles that guide the design are universal. The body needs light and darkness in proper measure. It needs movement throughout each day. It needs rest that is deep and uninterrupted. It needs nourishment from whole foods. It needs connection with others. It needs reasons to continue engaging with life. Meeting these needs does not require perfection. It requires attention. It requires noticing what works and what does not. It requires small adjustments over time. It requires patience with the process and with oneself. The reward for this attention is not immortality. It is not freedom from all difficulty. It is the possibility of living each decade as fully as the last. It is the chance to remain present in one's own life, to continue contributing, to continue experiencing, to continue mattering to others. It is the difference between merely accumulating years and actually living them. The body has been developing for millions of years. It knows what it needs. The task is not to invent new ways of living, but to remember the old ones. To arrange modern life so that it supports ancient biology. To work with the body rather than against it. To build, day by day, an architecture that will stand firm for as long as it is needed. If there is one idea to carry forward from this discussion, it is this. The body does not decline simply because time passes. It responds to what it experiences. It adapts to the signals it receives. When those signals are confused, the body becomes confused. When they are clear, the body knows what to do. You might consider, in the coming days, what signals you are sending your own body. When does it see light? When does it experience darkness? When does it move? And when does it rest? These are not small questions. They are the foundation upon which everything else is built. If this conversation has sparked something worth considering, you are welcome to share your thoughts in the comments. There is value in hearing how others navigate these questions and what they have discovered along the way. The Longevity Library holds many volumes. If you would like to continue exploring, we invite you to look through other recordings here. Subscribe if you wish, so that new wisdom finds its way to you when it becomes available. This is the Longevity Library. Listen, learn, and live longer.